All right, guys, welcome back. I said in the last video that I was going to finish off the YouTube comments, but I think I've gotten a bunch more. So I think I'm going to wait on those and get through as many asks as I can. And I don't even promise that I will get through them all because we have quite a few, which is, of course, on me because I did not do videos last week like I was supposed to. I only did one instead of three. So we're just trying to get through it. But this also happens pretty much every time the show is on, no matter which spin-off it is. I just end up getting a lot more to make videos about. And then when we're in the off season, it dries up a little bit. So, it is a good thing, but I will get through as much as I can. So let's just dive into the asks here. We have first from the Heart of Suicide, catching up on MBM videos right now and wanted to share an observation. Okay, before we even go on, can I say, I thought you were maybe trying to say MMB or something, which is Melissa McBride, and it took me way too long to figure out what MBM meant. I sat here and stared at it. And what is MB? Oh, it's me. That just tells you how much stuff I have filtering through my brain. And yeah, I was having a blonde moment. So anyway, all right. So here's your observation. If the Beth AU is Maggie's dream, then it's just a dream and par for the course of TWD. Significant nonetheless, but definitely a dream. If the AU is Negan's, then it's not a dream. It's a divine vision, which is an entirely different thing. Arguably, any dream sequence in TWD can be interpreted as a divine vision. It was deemed worthy of filming for our viewership, after all. But for an uninvolved character to receive information they haven't had any right to through dreams is evidence of something greater at work. We've seen characters have visions like this before. We've seen characters describe similar visions that we weren't privy to, that later come true. Anyway, my point is that this is exciting as Maggie's dream. As Negan's dream, it's pivotal and crucial. It's miraculous. It changes him into a prophet. Very fascinating observation, for sure. And, we've had other people on the show like Morgan, who we've kind of thought were prophets, functioning as prophets. So it would be really interesting if Negan starts functioning as one. So yeah, I think we're all really excited to see what they do with this AU episode and how they explain it and all of that. In this last episode, we had quite a few Christmas references from Negan, which I think was a foreshadow of that episode, since we know it's going to be Christmas time in the AU. And yeah, I love that. I love the way that you laid that out. I think that's really, really cool. I don't have a whole lot more to add other than that I really like that, and I'm excited to see what they do with it. So yeah, thank you for sending that in. All right, next one. Sending this in after episode 3, which was last week's. The way this episode seems to just perfectly encapsulate the fact that they brought someone back from season 4/5 of the flagship, though. Come through, Seth. Herschel Green philosophy plus flashback, which was an unexpected surprise, as flashbacks are not something that the show ever relies heavily on compared to some others. I feel like he triaged people during the prison sickness too, but not with colors. Can't remember details offhand. Of course, they use cells at the prison instead of handcuffing people to things, but it's a similar enough safety procedure. Man getting his leg bit / cut off is so on the nose too. Could have done an arm, but they reused Herschel's injury. Scissors being used as a weapon in the hospital, farming obviously, Lizzie references, Rick's 3 questions, moonshine after first drink being a dud, incorporating other community that burned down with mixed success reminds me of Woodbury joining the prison a bit. I thought Dillard's bandana was a bit funny, as Daryl obviously having one around was a thing during the prison farming era. I love that you capitalized a thing. Negan gives me a little bit of Merle vibes during the prison. Man who doesn't quite agree with what everyone else is trying to do and ends up doing the dirty work. Governor related in Merle's case and the fighting leaders for Negan. Herschel Ree, new to medicine, pulling off a medical miracle, a la Herschel Green, originally veterinary-based medicine, did with saving people during the prison outbreak. And Carl, too, which I know that was earlier, but still. Supposedly, there's a Maggie plus Lewis field trip coming up this season. That's the one we just saw. Again, was sent in last week. They mentioned being low on meds this episode, so now I'm wondering whether we're getting a repeat of the Michonne, Daryl, Tyreese, Bob med run. Much to chew on. Yeah, that's a good point. And I hadn't looked at it from quite as much a zoomed out view of that, but yeah, I mean, you can almost see the elements that they're replaying in the storyline. And, as you probably know already, when I watched this last episode, which was episode 4, the first thing I thought is this is the still episode. It's the structure of the still episode. But that's a good point, that it also could be the med run from early in 4A And, they're just doing a lot of this stuff. So I agree. I think that you're definitely on the right track here. And they're putting these things in to, remind us of the season four, to, kind of replay some of the elements that are going there, which also makes you wonder about the AU episode, right? Because there's not an AU episode in season four, although which is 416, does have flashbacks in it. So yeah, this is really fantastic, really, really interesting. Um, More than one person has expressed that they are getting Daryl vibes from Dillard, which is interesting. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more with some of the other asks. I think more than one person has told me that Negan is giving them Merle vibes too. I've seen that. And yeah, and then of course we're relating a lot of the hospital stuff to Grady, which I absolutely think we should. But it's a good point that they're showing. I mean, you have them flashing back to Herschel. We have Herschel that's doing the medicine here, and they're both got the same name. And yeah, I don't think any of that is a coincidence. So thanks for laying that out. That's a really cool way to think about it. And yeah, I definitely think they're going somewhere with it. So that's great. And I'm just really enjoying it. Thank you. All right, I've ended up feeling deeply connected to Beth and the possibility of her return over all these years. Looking back, it has been a really big part of my emotional life. I think her return would even symbolize something bigger for me, like hope in my real life as well. I don't know anyone in real life who feels like this, so it's interesting to me that there are other people like you all over the world who somehow ended up feeling just as connected to this. Do you think there's something we might all have in common, like personality-wise, that made us so drawn to Beth and to TD? I do. So thank you for that. Yeah. I think that I agree. I am, especially at the time that it happened, when season 4 and 5 first aired. I think that we really latched onto this. And there were a lot of us that felt this way, that we kind of needed it in our emotional lives. And that's definitely the way I felt back then. I mean, it's been a while and things have changed somewhat for me, but I've never stopped loving it, and I've never stopped hoping for it, and believing that it would happen. It's just not quite as much of an emotional anchor for me as it once was. But yeah, I think that, I don't know if it's a personality thing. I think those of us who believe it to be true, number one, we're really good at reading symbolism and reading beyond what is actually happening on the screen and in the plot. And that is a rare person who can do that. But I also think that it's more like being intuitive or being really, really sensitive to this kind of thing. And, it's just a matter of, because I've always said that anybody can hope for something not to be true. I mean, how many hundreds of TV shows are out there where, think like Dawson's Creek or something, where there's a love triangle and you either, you want these two people to be together or those two people, and you're going to get what you want or you're not. And then you can say, dang, I wish they would have done it this way and not that way. But TD isn't that. It never has been. It's really more of us kind of feeling in alignment with where the story was always going. And so we could just feel that that was not what actually happened, what they showed us on the screen, and that there was something more going on here, and that the story gods, meaning Gimple and Kang, they were going somewhere with this, and it is not where they were trying to make the general audience believe they were going with it. So I think it's more about being, I don't know how else to say it, intuitive or in alignment with the story. And, because it wasn't just about her death. It was about her character and the way she interacted with Daryl, and really being so on board with what they were doing in Still and Alone with those characters and with the story, that we were just paying really close attention to it, right? And because of that, we picked up on these details that maybe others in the GA didn't pick up on. So, I mean, I do think it's a trait that we all have. But logistically, it's about being so invested that they just couldn't fool us because we were paying too close of attention, and we still are. And obviously, that's not the entire GA. It's a very, very small slice. And, welcome to Team Delusional. Here we are. So I don't know if that answers your question. I hope it does. But I do think that we all have a lot in common to believe this, and that it's never felt like it was just pie in the sky hope. It was, or, what we wanted to have happen, or what we might write in a fan fiction or something. It was really a lot deeper than that. And I actually love that not only do we have this fandom, but it feels more like a movement. And it just, to me, there's always felt like there was something more spiritual to it than just being a random section of the fandom. And that's just my take on it. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. And thank you. What a cool ask. So thanks for sending that in. And I hope that we all feel that connected because I do, and clearly you do. And I know plenty of people that I talk to all the time who do. So you're definitely articulating with what a lot of people feel and what their experience of it was. So thank you for that. Thanks for making all these videos. They're really neat, and I always look forward to them. Oh, you're welcome, and thank you. I'm glad. All right. Atrium Regina Blue. Hi there. So Renata in DC is very heavily a Beth proxy, but is this her own death warrant if we are to get the original Beth back? Do you think she might die or sacrifice herself before we see Beth? In a similar manner, we don't see Carol at the same time as Daryl's love interests. Beth is kidnapped, Carol reunites with Daryl. When both ladies are at the hospital, only one carries on with Daryl. During Leah in the Woods, Carol is at the Kingdom. Connie gets trapped in the cave when she's with Carol. Again, with the Reapers, Carol is elsewhere, and the final, third, Rule of Threes arc with Leah has Carol at the Commonwealth instead. The biggest obvious crossover is her arrival at France when Isabel is dying. It's almost like Daryl is not allowed a love interest if Carol is there. Is Maggie not allowed a sister replacement either? She did lose both Enid and Tara at the same time, although we never saw her reactions, albeit we hardly saw any reactions apart from to Henry and Alden about Enid. So really good observations here. Yeah. I mean, in terms of Renata, it wouldn't surprise me if they killed her off. I have no idea if they're going to keep her beyond this season, but she seems like the kind of character that eventually, no matter how long, I mean, if they do more seasons of Dead City, then maybe she'll be on it for 2 or 3 seasons. But it seems like at the end of her arc, they would probably kill her off. So I'm more or less assuming that, but I just don't know when it will happen. But it's interesting that you say maybe it will be before Beth dies. Or I mean, before Beth shows up, I should say, that Renata will die before Beth shows up. The other thing that people have said, so we had kind of an interesting little interaction between Renata and Dillard where she complimented him and he said he doesn't get complimented by a lady. And it felt a little bit like it might be going in the romance direction. And I don't know if it actually will. It wouldn't surprise me either way. Like they could have kind of a flirtatiousness between them and never actually go there in a canon way. And it would still be representative of Beth and Daryl, like a proxy kind of thing. Or they could actually do a relationship between them, either way. But see, I keep thinking that Dillard is so much like Lizzie that there's going to be something really tragic and dark that happens around him. It doesn't necessarily mean that he has to go the way of Lizzie and be tragic and dark, maybe. But I've thought about that a little bit. That I mean, coupled with what I said before, that a lot of people are seeing or feeling like Daryl vibes from Dillard. So if it was Dillard and Renata, which are proxies for Daryl and Beth, then maybe something happens to Renata and then Dillard goes dark side. I mean, it could be just about anything, you guys. Like I'm really not trying to conjecture overly much here. It's just like some possibilities. So I can see that could be the case. So yeah, I mean, maybe it's really interesting the way that you've pointed out that maybe Renata has to go before Beth can show up. I don't know. We'll just have to see, but really interesting. As with Carol, I hadn't really ever thought of it that way before. I don't know that she can't be when he has a love interest. I think it's more that I don't know, she would distract him in a way that would distract from the story, or maybe Carol sometimes is his voice of reason too much, or the opposite, his voice of insanity too much, or you know what I mean? So I think it's more that having her there would have kind of distracted from the story they were trying to tell with him and whoever, Leah or Connie or whoever, Isabel. So I don't know. It's again, it's just I don't really have a whole lot more to say than that. That's a really interesting observation, and I mean the other thing is that Carol has changed a lot in Daryl Dixon. She finally let her dead go, and she's in a much more positive mindset. And that is actually a really big deal because she's been in this negative mindset pretty much since Sophia, since season two. So it's like you might say on the one hand, is that enough to change things? But that is radical for Carol's um, inner arc, right? For her development. So I don't know. I don't know where they're going to go with it. And I think it's super interesting, but I really like those observations. And I think it's very possible that Renata will die before Beth. But as with all things, we'll just have to wait and see. So thank you for pointing that out. Okay, thought you might find this interesting. People.com put out an article, 816, interviewing Lauren Cohan about when she temporarily left TWD to go do Whiskey Cavalier, and then came back to wrap up the main show and start the spinoff. Given how AMC controls what hits the press, it's hard to believe that this article coming out now on this topic can be random or a coincidence. Additionally, they name drop Angela King multiple times in the article. Perhaps she'll be more directly connected to things again soon, since the general audience is being reminded of her, especially in light of Seth Hoffman also being back. So I did glance through this article. My computer was being really slow and making it a pain to read. I need to read it on my phone and then it'll work a little better. So I won't go into specifics too much, but the thing that really jumped out at me most about this is that I'm not entirely sure I even believe that everything that Lauren is saying in this article. So to give you context, for those who don't remember, there was a time, it would have been after season seven, I think. No. It would have been after season eight because she didn't come until season two, that they did this contract dispute thing and they weren't sure if she was staying or going. And it really blew up on the internet like it was some sort of sexism thing where they weren't paying her well enough. And, even, Kari Payton commented on it. And at the time, I mean, obviously, I don't know for sure because I wasn't there and I don't know all the things. So, take it with a grain of salt. I'm not saying that I know this or anything. But to me, it didn't seem like it was about money because TWD is actually pretty good about paying its actors and really respecting its actors. And Lauren Cohan doesn't uh, strike me as the kind of person who would ask for an unreasonable salary that they couldn't give. So it felt like there was something else going on here. And I just, I didn't know. I kind of followed it just because I, followed TWD and I saw all of the things about it. And then here's the thing is that after it was over, she came out and said that it wasn't about the money, that was not what they were disputing. It was more that she was being given other offers that she kind of wanted to do, but she also kind of wanted to stay with TWD, and she was having a hard time deciding what she wanted to do. And that's why it took so long because she just couldn't decide. And then finally, what she said is she realized she could do them both. She could leave for a little while and try something else, which was Whiskey Cavalier, and then she could come back and she could have both. And that means that the show, the writers, the studio, all of that allowed her to do that, which they don't always allow actors to do. But she had a lot of time on The Walking Dead at that point, and she was one of their higher paid actors and well-known characters. And so I'm sure because of that, she had a lot of clout and influence and was able to negotiate with them to do both, right? But the point is, after everybody made such a huge deal on the internet about them not paying her because she was a woman, she came out and said it was not that at all. It was just her needing to make a decision, and they gave her the space and the time to make that decision. And then when she did, they put together the next contract, right? So in this article, she's kind of going back to saying that it's about the money. And that's the part that I'm going, I don't know if I believe that. It feels a little bit convenient to return to that now. And it's not really a big deal either way, because the article is more about how she left and then came back. But my point is, I almost feel like this is a little bit contrived. Like you said, this article coming out now on this topic, it feels like something they're putting out on purpose. And so maybe they're taking some of the talking points from the narrative that was on the internet back then in order to create this article so that she can talk about this and about how she left and came back. And yeah, I'm 100% with you that this is quite suspicious because she left to do Whiskey Cavalier, which is an ABC pilot that, the series that only lasted one season. Emily has done many of those. So even though, as far as I know, Lauren only did it once with the one show and the one season, and Emily has done it more, that's just because Emily's been off the show for a lot longer, right? And so she's done several shows like this. But the point is, Lauren's story could be Emily's story about leaving to do a different show and coming back. So yeah, I completely agree. I I hope that we see Angela again more involved soon because I kind of miss seeing her being involved, and she wrote some of our best Bethel episodes. So yeah, I'm 100% with you in what you're seeing here is this particular little conspiracy theory, and I agree. I think you're right. Of course, we don't know for sure. Like I said, it's not like I'm privy to what's going on behind the scenes, but with everything that I do see and everything that I do study, that was the first thing that jumped out at me is that it feels a little bit contrived the way they're talking about it. And why would they do that? Just so that they can introduce us to this idea of an actress leaving to do other shows and then coming back to TWD. So, yeah, 100%. Thank you for finding that article and sending it in. All right, I understand that the timelines between this spinoff and Daryl Dixon are intentionally still weeble wobbly at this point, but I wonder if the traitor slash Devon might end up connecting to Ash slash his plane after they left Daryl and Carol. Hopping over from Europe, Newfoundland would make sense as a puddle jumping point on the way to New York and America generally. Yeah, 100%. I think that's very possible, and I do believe, even though we don't know exactly why they put it in, I do think the Newfoundland reference is on purpose. We do think that it has ties to the CRM that, through Devon, that he might have had been with the CRM before he got to that little town and his episode from Tales of the Walking Dead. But yeah, I can see it being a connection point for all of those things. So here's hoping you're right. I mean, I have no idea, but I hope you're right because that makes sense and that would be super cool. A good way to tie together um, the different spin-offs and bring all the characters together. So I hope so. All right. Do crabs think fish can fly scene. All of those walkers in that scene have buckets on their heads. There's a societal phrase, either referred to as just crabs in a bucket or crab mentality. To snag a definition summary from Wikipedia, if you put one crab in a bucket, it can easily climb out and escape. If you put many crabs in a bucket, any crab that tries to climb up is pulled back down by the others, leaving all of them trapped. Ergo, if one person tries to succeed or improve their life, others in the same struggling group will pull them back down. The core attitude is summarized as, if I can't have it, neither can you. Their new power source, perhaps. Tie that into the Herschel and Negan's funny back and forth on who's doing better, plus guy from the bricks that wants bonuses for doing community work. And this whole scene just seemed extremely on the nose as being ominous of things to come, especially given that the main big bads, to quote Buffy the Vampire Slayer jargon, from season 1 and 2 are decidedly dead and dusted now. Potentially internal community division will be the new big bad. Not totally sold on this, as Negan did save curly-haired man who wanted more than what was originally deemed his share, but it's interesting. Seth Hoffman definitely doesn't seem to be the type to needlessly waste dialogue on his TWD comeback tour. I agree. I do think I like that interpretation of their dialogue because the dialogue was very random, and or at least it seemed that way. If you look at it from the lens of they could put any dialogue they wanted in here, why are they talking about crabs thinking fish can fly? I mean, that's very specific, and it's not something you usually hear people talking about, right? So there's a reason for that, and I do like your interpretation of it. And yeah, I think that very well could be a foreshadow. Another thing that I didn't talk about too much on my video, but I was thinking about more after was just the very last scene. I mean, you could say that this crabs in a bucket scene foreshadowed, the cracks and the ground caving in, but I think the cracks and the ground caving in foreshadows of something much bigger as well. And the fact that it showed the train, I'm not sure exactly what the message is there, but I feel like, yeah, it could be. Obviously, I don't have this theory fully formed yet. It's something that's kind of been drifting through my head on the fringes, but if like okay, let's just try this on for size. Let's say that in um the last episode before the AU episode, something bad does happen. Maybe it has to do with what we talked about before with Renata and Dillard in some way. What if something bad happens and it could go, be foreshadowed by this crab in the bucket stuff and by the caving in of the road that we saw um, in the previous episode, and something about that thing that's bad that happens to their community, whether it's the community caving in or how did you put it here? internal community division leads to destruction of some kind. Um, the ground caving in and showing the train. To me, that is such a potent symbol. It's the subway, right, that we saw, but the trains are a big symbol of pathways and character arcs in The Walking Dead. You know, everybody was on a different path, but they all crossed the train tracks in season 4, and all the train tracks came together at Terminus, which of course was where they all reunited and came together. Of course, you know, that didn't include Beth, but you see how they use that as a symbol. And it's always been a really big deal to me that in 509 we didn't see a train per se, but in the parts that were really abstract and were showing, you know, Beth in Tyrese's death hallucination, it would show the camera moving along the tracks as the tracks disappeared into the woods. And that felt very intentional and very like a powerful symbol to me. And I've always kind of seen it as her path along the tracks is going to disappear so that she's separate from Team Family and they're not going to see her for a while. Now, here in New York, in Dead City, the subway is under the city. In other words, it's unseen by people on the surface. But we have something literally cracking and crumbling and kind of blowing up, and then the unseen becomes seen. And it's a train. You see what I mean? How it all seems to be connected somehow. And so I don't even know where I was going with that, but I feel like it definitely is foreshadowing something that may lead to the revelation of Beth, you know, her making her seen where up until now she's been unseen. I guess maybe that's the easiest way to put it. I don't know if that's the case, but that's kind of the vibe that I'm getting. So I don't know if that's helpful or not to you, but I do really love that interpretation. I think the internal community division, I mean, I'm sure that will play a part. I don't know if it's going to totally tank the community or drive them out of New York. I mean, I don't know what it'll be or what it'll look like or what the consequences will be, but I definitely think that they're going to be doing that in some way. So I definitely think you're on the right track here. And yeah, just thanks for sending that in. I really like that interpretation. And it's good to know all of this because I didn't know that and hadn't thought of it. So anyway, yeah, very, very intriguing. Thanks for sending that in. That was such an interesting directing choice to have Maggie and Lewis playing Jenga of all things in this episode. If you take a gander at Jenga symbolism, it illustrates how removing foundational elements, safeguards, or pieces over time makes a structure fragile, meaning a final minor action causes a total collapse. And then the street crack caves completely in, separating the group and threatening their food stores. Okay, so this goes really well with what I was just talking about in the previous one. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, you could say, I guess we can say moving forward that when they play games, they're always important. We know that Beth and Daryl's I Never game was super important in the symbolism. And yeah, I would say Jenga is too. Um, Interestingly, Maggie was really good at it. Like Lewis was good at it, and she complimented him. And he said, well, you know, I have the hands of a surgeon. But then he's like, geez, do you have the hands of a surgeon too? So they were both really good at it. And I'm not sure what that means. But yeah, maybe this is what leads to whatever the collapse is foreshadowing, that they're getting rid of elements that they need or, you know, safeguards, that kind of thing, and that it's going to ultimately lead to their community's downfall. That makes perfect sense to me that that would be what it's foreshadowing. And yeah, I mean, I also didn't talk about this, but the fact that they're on separate sides of the street. So, okay, another half-formed theory here. Because it was a still episode with Maggie and Louie, and it's very much like it. I mean, obviously, we didn't see Beth and Daryl kiss, and but Maggie and Louie didn't actually kiss either. She was just thinking about it. So I don't remember if we actually saw a shoe be left behind, but even so, um, this could lead to Maggie and Louie's separation, right? And that was definitely foreshadowed by the ending where they were on opposite sides of the street. And I'm also kind of thinking about 4B when all of them left the prison and were separated into little groups and how much we've seen that foreshadow future arcs, right? So in 4B, you had Rick Michonne and Carl in one group, and then of course they became a family union. They were together after that, and Rick and Michonne had their own spinoff at some point, right? And so we kind of it was a foreshadow of things to come in different arcs based on how they were grouped and how they were divided. And that could be the case here too. We have Maggie and Negan in a group on one side, and then we have Renata, Louie, Herschel, and I don't remember who else. Dillard, I think, is on the other side. So that definitely could be a foreshadow of them all getting separated. And who knows? I mean, we might not even get the payoff of this foreshadow in this season or even in the spinoff. Maybe it's something for beyond the spinoff. I don't know. I don't know. But anyway, yeah, great observation. And I wouldn't have thought of that to look at the actual game as a symbol. But yeah, go you, because 100% I think it is now. So thank you. Do we know what Louie's wife did professionally before the world ended? I Googled how many people in East Harlem own vehicles since it's such a rare thing for people living in New York City to do generally, and only an estimated 15 to 20% of people do. It's interesting that the episode decided to make a repeated point to tell us that Louie and Marisol routinely drove out of the city, plus who was driving, and the passenger princess. The TD in me was also reminded of how, in What's Happening and What's Going On, Tyreese hallucinated Beth in the driver's seat of a van, suburban, something van-like in shape. Yeah, I don't remember that it told us what she did, so I don't know. I'd have to go back and watch again, or they might just not have told us. But that's a good point that they specifically had a car, so they were one of a minority who had the car. Yeah, and if we are comparing who is a proxy of who, I mean, even in them, I mean, 510, the episode Them, Daryl and Maggie were conflated because they have similar personalities. They are kind of the rougher, more destructive, what's the word I'm looking for? Like more pessimistic person in the partnership, whereas Glenn, Beth, they're the more optimistic, the more hopeful ones, right? So, I mean, in this comparison, Louie would be Beth and Maggie would be Daryl. But when it's Louie and Marisol, because we don't really know her personality, then it's hard to say. But yeah, it's a good point that she was driving. He lost her. And that's, personality wise, he's more like Beth. But we also have the parallel to Daryl in that he lost a woman he cared about, right? And if she was the one driving, I see why you are comparing that to Beth driving in 509. So yeah, I don't think I have a whole lot more to say about that, but it's an interesting thing to pick up on, and we'll just have to see as the season goes if they tell us any more about her or who she was. So, I mean, even if they don't, we've already got a really good comparison to Beth and Daryl because of everything in that story. So they might not tell us anything else and it might just be that, but I would actually be perfectly okay either way. So, all right. Don't know if you listen to The Weeknd. You've probably heard of him at least, yes. And there are so many songs of his that I feel are very Beth coded. My favorite thing to do when I'm driving is to blast his music and think of the many headcanons I have for Bethyl and how their story will play out after Daryl finds Beth is alive. Yeah, I'm glad I'm not the only one that's done that before. The imageries that I've come up with are laid out similar to fan edits on YouTube that people love to post involving their favorite ship, character, TV show, or movie. I have this fantasy that I'll one day learn how to edit well enough so I can make a fan edit of Bethyl with the Weeknd songs in the background. My questions for you are, what are your favorite headcanons? Oh, that could take a while. What do you hope for when it comes to the continuation of Beth and Daryl's story? What is the theory that you lean more towards when it comes to Beth's disappearance, where she has been and what she has been doing? And after 10 years or so of being away from the family, what kind of character or person do you think she is now? Wow, these are some loaded questions. Okay. I have so many different headcanons, and a lot of them contradict each other. So I know I can't have them all. I've thought about putting them all together in a story, in a fan fiction, and it's just like not even possible to get them all into the same story because they're all so different. And that's because, as we've learned different things and come across different groups, you kind of come up with headcanons for how she could show up with that group, or it just gives you ideas for something similar, so it's always expanding. But I guess let's see, what are my favorite? I don't know that I could pick favorites, but I'll tell you, I guess, just the first few that come to mind. I like the headcanon of basically her seeing Daryl from a distance before he sees her, and she doesn't want to approach him right away for some reason. It could be a memory thing, but in my head canon, it's not really a memory thing. It's more that maybe she doesn't want to put him in danger, or maybe she's got bad guys after her and she doesn't want to make him a target or something. But whatever group he's with, gets into trouble a few times, either like surrounded by walkers or surrounded by bad guys, and she helps them. And so it's like he sees a figure in the distance who saves their lives and he doesn't know who it is, and it happens multiple times. And then like I have all kinds of headcanons for how they finally meet and he finally realizes it's her. Things like that are like what I think about a lot. I think about what she is doing. I see her being involved in some really dangerous stuff, like maybe with the CRM, if she's trying to bring down the CRM in some way. And she's just going to be like a badass and super heroic and everything. And he's going to be really impressed by her. I mean, he was anyway, but even more so now. I also think of her dealing with a lot of really heavy stuff. Whatever that ends up being, in whatever she's involved with in her storyline. I've got, like I said, lots of headcanons that I'm really not going to go into the details of because we would be here for hours and hours. But like dealing with stuff that's really heavy and dealing with it by herself, basically. And then she'll meet Daryl again and he'll be there to help her deal with it, basically. And, of course he's going to join her and be on her side and be like, oh, you're not doing this crap by yourself anymore. That sort of thing. Like those are the kind of stories that I love. It's almost like a weird twist on a Cinderella story because she's just alone and dealing with the stuff. And then he's going to show up and not exactly rescue her, but he'll be someone that she has in her corner now where she didn't have anyone before. And so, Daryl knows what that's like to be alone and feel like you're dealing with everything by yourself. And so, you know what I mean? They could really connect on that. And of course, there's a heavy dose of romance thrown in, and we all have headcanons about that too. So for the continuation, I mean, obviously that they will come back together, their romance, but also I really do want to see the whole group come back together. I mean, as much as I mostly want to see Daryl's reaction to Beth being alive, I also want to see like Rick's and Michonne's reaction to her being alive, and Maggie's, and what would she and Negan, their response to each other be? I mean, it's going to be, you guys think about that. Like if it was Maggie saying, oh yeah, this is my buddy Negan, like that would be one thing. But it's like, this is my buddy Negan who murdered Glenn. I mean, what is Beth's reaction to that going to be? I just want to see everybody tell their stories, and I want to get the character reactions to everything that's happened. And I mean, I just want a continuation. And I'm a big fan of the idea of them fighting a big war against either the CRM or whatever organization it ends up being. I still think it'll probably be the CRM, because that's just a fun storyline. And I feel like they've been alluding to it and foreshadowing it and had it in mind from at least season 4. And I mean, the fact that there were helicopters on the roof of the big spot conflates Beth and the CRM. It just does. And so I think because they've been looking forward to that for so long, so have I. And I want to see that come to fruition. So yeah, I mean, I think most of us are fine with just about anything as long as the story continues and we get to see Beth and Daryl together romantically. But there's lots of things I would like to see. My theory. I think. I guess my theory is something along, I mean, it changes all the time. So to say, what theory do I lean toward? Well, it depends on the day of the week. So I think I lean toward something with the CRM, even if she wasn't immediately taken by the CRM. Either she's been in the CRM in some way ever since, but I also think it's possible that either she was taken by the CRM early on and then got away from them, or maybe she wasn't taken in by them right away, wandered around, and was eventually swept up by them. I mean, I think it has something to do with that. I think it's about wandering around. And then you have the Red Machete, which there's a really good post made about that I reblogged just yesterday, I think, which suggests her wandering around. And so I think it's going to be a matter of she's been busy, but she's been wandering around, and they just haven't found each other, And if there was her going to Europe, or I mean, there's so many possibilities. So that's the general thing, is that she's been dealing with her own stuff, and I think she'll be a leader. But to be more specific than that, there's just too many possibilities. And I'm not really picky on which one they use or anything. I just want to see where they go with it, you know. As for what kind of character or person do I think she is, I think that she will be recognizable as herself. She will still be who she once was, but we're also going to see a lot of growth and maturity in her. She's going to be tougher. She's going to be have more physical prowess, and I think she's going to be a leader. You know, much like Daryl became a leader, she did too. I think she's going to be somebody who has led a community and has led people before. I see her being the kind of leader that, you know, maybe she joins a group and she's not the leader right away. Somebody else is, because she's just joining this group. But over time, people start to see that she knows what she's doing. And, you know, both when it comes to like literal physical survival, but also, you know, the more emotional, spiritual aspect, and keeping people together, and just being a good leader, and watching out for people and taking care of people. And so people will gravitate toward her because, you know, maybe their other leader is kind of a doofus or something, you know. So that's kind of what I'm leaning toward. But I also think that she and Daryl will connect and complement each other, and that it's just going to be really lovely. So that's kind of a high level view of my headcanons. And I hope that answers your question. I could go into a lot more detail than that, but I will not. We are already running long, guys. So I think I'm going to end it there. Those are some fantastic questions to end on. And I hope that you all think about what your headcanons are. I'm sure, like me, you have tons of them. But they're always fun to talk about and to share. So thank you for that question. All right, I did not get through all of the asks or all of the comments, but hopefully we will get caught up in them next week. By the time this by the time this video goes live, we'll have a new episode within 24 hours or so, 48 hours, something like that. So yeah, I'm looking forward to episode 5 of Dead City, and I will just talk to you again on Sunday when I do my analysis of that. Everyone have a fantastic rest of your weekend, and I'll be back with you soon. Bye.